Good day, church family. I'm going to have a short message, a very short message here. I hope to be a bit of encouragement for your day. We're going to try to do this each day, and you'll see why here shortly, for the month of November, possibly December, and unless something really comes up and I'm unable, that's what I'm going to endeavor to do. Today, I'm thankful for. Well, and there's the topic there. It's being thankful. And the whole month of November, I'll tell you what I was thinking about doing was I'm going to attempt to just bring a short, just a devotional, a thought or whatnot, 25 days of Thanksgiving. We're on November 1st. We're coming up on Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is not a Christian holiday per se. It's not an event that's written in the Bible that we should keep or anything like that. There is some contrast. There's some similarity to a Jewish Feast of the Tabernacles, which is very much like the original Thanksgiving that we have in the United States. It's a time to set aside to honor the great bounty and blessings and even harvest that God has given his people. And we're going to touch on that in just a moment very quickly. But what I'd like to do is just begin laying the framework for 25 days of Thanksgiving. I want to encourage you to be thankful. Now, I've tried to record this a couple times, trying to get my system set up, and so I think that my audio is going to be good, and we'll go ahead and get this posted up. All right? So we'll pull the screen off, and what I want to give you real quick is a little thought, and it comes from Exodus, and we're also going to get into Zechariah. This is going to be really quick, but I happen to enjoy a topic in Zechariah specifically. But then I found that it was mentioned in the detail of the Feast of Tabernacles in Exodus. So what I'm going to do is kind of give you this. So the Feast of the Tabernacle comes 5 days after Yom Kippur. It was a harvest celebration and is the inspiration behind the American Thanksgiving Day. It began as a 7-day feast, later expanded into 8. Then all the tithes of Israel had set aside during the year were brought to Jerusalem for a joyous time of national celebration and thanksgiving for the Lord's bountiful provision. Very similar, isn't it? Now, the same as the American Thanksgiving has kind of gone awry over time, the Feast of the Tabernacles, as it originally was, has changed over time as well. But there are elements of it that still exist. I've got some dear friends over in California that are Jewish, and they've talked many times how they wish we could come over there and spend our Thanksgiving holiday and some of our holiday season with them, and allow us some time to experience their fellowship and their holidays. And they said they would experience and share in some of ours if we wanted to do that. But specifically, I asked them about the Feast of the Tabernacles because I'm curious about it. And they said that today over there, what they do is they set up these tents. Imagine what you might have a sporting tent, or like when we have a yard sale, we put a tent up outside, a 10 by 10, just kind of shade shelter at the top and 4 poles. And they put a table on it, and they'd be cooking food all day, and they'd bring it out and they prepare it. And right there in the front yard, they'd put it there under the tent. And the neighbors do the same, and the neighbors do the same, and the neighbors do the same. And so it's kind of a U.S. quasi-modern version that they have in their Jewish community of Feast of the Tabernacles. And they would go from tent to tent, from tabernacle to tabernacle, if you would, fellowshipping, sampling some food, but just giving God thanks. That's what it's about. See if I can hold myself together here real quick. All right. So in the U.S., we began, and I will probably over the coming days give you some tremendous history of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S. It is not a Christian holiday. Again, it's not biblical in the New Testament, but it is very important because society during the Jewish days did it with the Feast of Tabernacles, and society still today has taken time to set aside a day which we should give recognition and thanksgiving to God for his great blessings. Very simple. Now, we should do that on a daily basis, but that we set aside a time as a national holiday is a big deal. And that's something you should be proud of as a United States citizen. So anyway, what I want to do is I want to tap into this today, very specifically. It'll be brief, and I want to encourage you a little bit. So, in the Feast of the Tabernacles, there'd be the aroma, there'd be delicious foods. People would be coming from all over the country, from many nations, to participate in the Feast of the Tabernacles. But there were some specifics in setting up for it. In fact, if you have a chance to study that in Exodus, I believe it's around chapter 20 on through 28 to 30, somewhere in that range. There's a lot of talk about specifically the Feast of the Tabernacles and the preparation for it. But what I want to do, I want to pull you into this one specifically. Verse 28 here. And they shall bind the breastplates. Am I on the right one here? Let me just check here. No, I'm sorry. I'm in chapter 28, and I want to get down to 36 and 37. All right? I'm going to highlight this for you. And thou shalt put it on a blue lace. Put what? Let's go up above it. I jumped the gun a little bit here. And thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, something special, right? Something costly, if you will, that you're going to make of your own provision. And grave upon it, that is to write or inscribe. I think of the insignia of kings, and they would have the insignia ring, and they would use it to seal the wax on an envelope. That's what I think of when I think of engraving in biblical times. I mean, they really meant something more than just writing an initial. Okay, engrave upon it, like the engravings of a signet. In fact, that's what it says. Holiness to the Lord. That's pretty strong. Holiness to the Lord. Kind of a simple statement, but very specific. So let's get this straight. Thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and grave upon it like an engraving of a signet, holiness to the Lord. It goes on to say, and then thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. And so, very interesting specifics that it gave. So you're supposed to take something special, something costly, and make a gold plate, and then make an engraving upon it that says holiness unto the Lord, place it on a blue lace, and set it up there on the mitre. Now, what does that have to do with you? What does that have to do with what I'm about to share with you? Well, I'm now going to take you into Zechariah. This is my other area of excitement in regards to the festival of the feast, and just something to consider today, okay? Because that same mention, holiness unto the Lord, is mentioned here in Zechariah. In fact, let's get on down here to, I'm in 14, and I'm going to go down to 16 through 21, general area here. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year annually to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and keep the Feast of Tabernacles. That's an instruction for those that came up against Israel to keep the Feast of the Tabernacles. That's actually ultimately going to mean to be able to fellowship with them. Those people that rose up against Jerusalem, to now be able to fellowship with the people in Jerusalem and honor the King of Kings, the Lord of hosts. It says here, and it shall be, whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King of the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. Now, the purpose of the Feast of Tabernacles is to take time and to thank God for His goodness, His blessings, His provision, and the harvest. Literally, that's what it's about. And they have a feast from house to house, a feast from tabernacle to tabernacle, a feast from house to house, and fellowship. And they're telling people from other nations that came up against Jerusalem to come and join them every year in it. That's pretty strong. Your enemies become your friends. Anyway, so it says here that those that do not come up, those that came up to Jerusalem, and they're supposed to come each year and thank God, but do not come, there will be no rain on them. It's an interesting contrast, because in Jerusalem they're going to be celebrating the harvest and the bounty and the production, and those that don't fellowship with Him are going to have no rain, which means no harvest, no production, no blessings of God. And then verse 18 there says, and if the family of Egypt go not up, and come not, that have no rain, there shall be plagues. Well, that's what happens when you have lack of food. You start having famines, then you have pestilence and plagues, right? It's a natural progression. Wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast of the tabernacles. So it seemed to be a pretty strong instruction for those that had come up against Jerusalem and warred against Jerusalem to now fellowship with Jerusalem. Okay, and to keep the Feast of the Tabernacles, to be thankful to God for his provision. But now, that's not really my point of this. I just want to give you the context. Now I'm going to give you my point. All right? Here you go, right here. In verse 20. In that day shall there be upon the bells of the horses. Now, for me in the United States, or for you, it might be hard to imagine that, but for me, with my family being from Maine, I imagine the bells on the horses, winter, Christmas, snow time, bells on the horses. Ching, 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 ching. That's what I imagine, okay? But now, obviously, this wasn't necessarily a Christmas horse, if you will, in Jerusalem. But I'm just trying to give you a picture, okay? Verse 20. In that day shall there be upon the bells of the horses holiness unto the Lord. And the pots in the Lord's house shall be like the bowls before the altar. Literally referring to the same thing, holiness unto the Lord. Now think about that. Whoever's keeping the horses in the stable is literally taking their bridles and the bells on the bridles and inscribing on them holiness unto the Lord. His work, his effort in caring for the animals, and then those that are maybe riding an animal or taking one of the animals and using it to move produce, when they take that horse by the rein, is seeing the bell that says holiness unto the Lord. A reminder, this is why we're here right now. This is why we're here this season every year, is to give thanks to God. Holiness unto the Lord. A reminder. Coming into the city, the first reminder is just the bells on the horses on your transportation. Imagine, if you will, when you walk up to your car, right beside the window, that side post, the side pillar they actually call it, or you go to open your door. What if that side pillar you had inscribed on there, holiness unto the Lord? Let's just imagine that for a moment. And every time you got into your vehicle, just like every time somebody got on a horse or they took their horse to move produce, they read holiness unto the Lord. They were reminded of their purpose in life today and where all their blessings come from God. Now, the next thing in verse 21, it goes on. Well, at the end of verse 20 there, I apologize. It referred to the pots in the Lord's house shall be like the bowls before the altar. So there's even pots and bowls in the Lord's house. Holiness unto the Lord. You know, when we go to church, the communion table up front, oftentimes in many churches says, in remembrance of me. In remembrance of me. That inscription, that reminder, that's why we do it. So often we go into church today, we don't even read that inscription, but it's there that we remember why. Why? Because of Christ. The Feast of the Tabernacles is specifically to remember why we're being blessed. Because of God. Because of the King of Kings, the Lord of hosts. God's goodness, his riches upon us. Verse 21, though, that's where it gets special to me. In verse 21, if you get a chance to read this, I'm in Zechariah 14 and verse 21. And it says, yea, every pot in Jerusalem. Now we're not just in the Lord's house. We're not just around the altar. Every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts. And all they that sacrifice shall come and take of them, and see therein, that is to cook therein. And in that day there shall be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. What does that mean? We mentioned earlier that those that came up against Jerusalem are to now, they were once enemies against Jerusalem, are to now come annually into Jerusalem and participate in the Feast of the Tabernacles. That is, to sit in fellowship, one with one, what was an enemy before. to give thanks to God for all his provisions, all his goodness, and to do this annually. And it says here at the end of verse 21 that there should be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. Literally, there's that level of fellowship between one another that you don't see race anymore. You don't see that problem between each other anymore, that warring between each other anymore. You have fellowship before God because you're one in unity in giving thanks. But going back to that verse 21, yea, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts. I imagine, I kind of have this internal desire one day, and I've told my friends in California, they've invited me to their Feast of Tabernacles in California, and how they do it here in the U.S., the tabernacle tents set in front of their houses and everything. But I'd like to go with them one time when they actually go back to Jerusalem there during a Feast of the Tabernacles. I'd like to experience some of this in maybe a community that still does it like this. I imagine going into the kitchen where the woman is preparing the food and stirring the food and seeing that clear water, and below that broth seeing words, holiness unto the Lord. Now I expect it would be in Hebrew and I might not be able to read it, but that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I expect. Can you imagine if in my house Dora has a particular pan that we do pancakes and eggs and we do just different things in. There's this one pan we use very regular. And then there's this pot that just happens to be the pot we do a lot in. It just happens to fit a lot of what we do, right? And in fact, almost every day, that pan or that pot or both are sitting on our stove doing something. Imagine if you took that common pot or pan that you use on a regular basis and you inscribed in the bottom of it, holiness unto the Lord. That when you're cooking, that love of providing you for your family, of cooking for your family is just pouring out of your heart, but also the remembrance that it's all from God. Giving that thanks and blessings to Him. Now, in the setup of the Feast of Tabernacles, they spoke of taking something special, a gold plate, and inscribing it as a signet and putting it on blue lace and treating it special. But then in Zechariah we have the description of holiness unto the Lord being written on the bells of the horses, literally the transportation. And then every pot in Jerusalem. I think there's a reason for this. I think that so that it's at the forefront of our minds who gives us what we have. When we're fixing our food, we're dedicating it to God because He's the one that provided it for us. When we're traveling on our horse or on an automobile, if you will, we're having something that's reminding us that God gave it to us. And for that, we're dedicating it to God. And we're able to have on the forefront of our mind God's goodness upon our lives. It may be that etching your car might not be the best thing. Okay? Years ago, there used to be you tie a string around your finger, and then people would forget why they tied a string around their finger. But the tying a string around their finger was supposed to remind you of something you were supposed to do. So I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to ask you to consider, in like manner, inscribing something in your life as holiness unto the Lord. And I don't necessarily mean fully inscribing it. Of course, you may want to. You may want to inscribe down the side of your car. I don't know. It may be more appropriate, it might be better to maybe take a little ribbon and down to the window of your car, open the door, and tie a ribbon around that post, and then roll the window up. People will look at you and say, what's that ribbon on their car? They won't have any idea. But every time you go up to your car and you open it, just like every time you went, in the story in Jerusalem, they would go and get the horse by the bridle and begin to take their transportation. They're reading holiness unto the Lord. They're reminded that what they lay their hands to and what they have is to be holy unto God. And they're reminded of where their blessings come from. Think about that. Think if you could mark the side of your automobile. Maybe it's just like I say, with a string or a ribbon. Maybe take a string and tie it around the steering wheel. Nobody knows what it is. Maybe people are riding in your car and they have no idea what it is. But when you're in your automobile, you think holiness unto the Lord. I'm serving God today in what I'm doing, in going to the grocery store, or in going to work, or carrying my kids to school. And I'm taking time when I see that string to remember that what I'm doing is to be holy unto the Lord. I'm dedicating this day and I'm dedicating this time in this automobile to the Lord. And I'm also, through that, reminded that all good things come from God. It may be that your pots, you actually go ahead and start writing at the bottom of it, or inscribing, carving, okay? Maybe your water bottle. Maybe you want to just be outright. Your water bottle you take with you to work today, or you're walking around the house with, take a permanent marker, write holiness unto the Lord on the outside. Just a reminder that what you're doing, what you're handling, dedicate it to God. And thereby, remember the good things that you have are from God, so that you can be thankful to the King of Kings and the Lord of Hosts. I would not encourage you to inscribe your body or to do a tattoo. I would not encourage that, okay? But you could tie a string around your finger as a reminder. Again, you could inscribe your pots. You could put a string around your car, around your steering wheel. Little things as a reminder so that you remember that God is important in your life, that He has provided you all your blessings, and those things that you lay your hand to, you lay your hand to them with the intent of it being holy unto the Lord. Imagine on Thanksgiving Day, preparing the turkey and maybe the plates. You're eating your turkey, you're eating your cranberry sauce and your stuffing and enjoying yourself, and slowly as people clear their plates, they see in the middle of their plate a permanent marker that says holiness unto the Lord. I don't know if this will mean anything to you, but what I'd like to do is do my best, I'll try to keep it shorter than this, to encourage you daily for Thanksgiving. 25 days of Thanksgiving, I will have a survey, a poll, some questions in band, and I will also have something that I'm going to ask you to do, specifically to set something aside, even if it's just by tying a string around it as a reminder, to be holiness unto the Lord and to remember to be thankful. Amen? God bless you.